Far away beyond the cold blue shadow of Neptune, the universe seemed quiet and endless. Stars glowed like frozen sparks in the dark, and the planets of the solar system drifted in silence. But in that silence, something new appeared, a formation of metallic shapes moving together, like silver arrows cutting through space. They were not asteroids or human probes. They were Valorian ships, and massive, shining, and built for conquest. Their hulls shimmered with light from unknown energy sources. Inside those ships, thousands of Valorians prepared for their next victory. They had conquered 23 worlds before, and now their leaders had chosen a new target, Earth. The Valorians were tall, crystal-skinned beings with minds trained for control and expansion. To them, Earth was a small, uncivilized planet, a place full of noise, pollution, and conflict. They saw humans as a weak species trapped by emotion and pride. The Valorian commander, High Strategist Zelthor, looked at the holographic display of the blue planet and smiled. "This world will fall within days," he said proudly. "Their defenses are primitive. Their people are divided. They will not even know we are coming until it is too late." His officers bowed their heads. They trusted him completely. The Valorian Empire had never lost a war, but what they did not know was that Earth was not sleeping. It had been watching. Beneath the deserts of Nevada, in a quiet underground facility covered by layers of sand and silence, a group of humans worked tirelessly in front of glowing screens. The air was heavy with the sound of machines and soft beeps of computers. This secret base was known only to a few world leaders. Its name was Project Aegis, a joint global defense project formed in secret after a mysterious signal was detected 3 years earlier, coming from deep space. Dr. Amira Solon, a scientist from Egypt, adjusted her headset and whispered, "Signal strength increasing. It's not random. It's organized. They're getting closer." Across from her, Commander Ethan Rhodes, a calm and focused officer from the United States Space Command, leaned forward. "How far?" "Crossing Neptune's orbit," she replied. "Estimated fleet size, 38 ships." The room went silent. 38 alien ships entering their solar system. It was no longer theory. It was real. Rhodes turned to the global communication channel, where scientists and military officers from more than 30 nations appeared on screen. The flag of the United Earth Coalition shone faintly behind them. "It's time," Rhodes said. "Activate Aegis Protocol 1. Let's make history." High above Earth, satellites came to life. Hidden probes near Mars and Jupiter began sending encrypted data. Deep in the oceans, communication cables glowed faintly as signals traveled through them. Even the moon's dark side, where a small research base stood, received the alert. For the first time in human history, every nation united under one purpose, not to fight each other but to defend their home. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, and astronauts all worked together as one. Humanity didn't have faster-than-light ships or grand fleets, but what they had was creativity, the ability to adapt and think differently. Instead of building weapons to destroy, Project Aegis had built systems to confuse, disrupt, and neutralize. They had developed drones that could mimic space rocks, satellites that could bend signals, and AIs that could predict alien flight paths before the aliens even reached Mars. Humanity had learned something powerful. In a universe full of stronger species, survival meant intelligence. Meanwhile, aboard the Valorian flagship Crown of Dominion, Commander Zelthor received the first data from their scanning units. "Energy readings confirm life across the third planet," an officer said. "They are using primitive radio waves and chemical rockets. They have no idea we are coming." Zelthor gave a quiet laugh. "Then it will be an easy victory. Prepare the atmospheric carriers. We will begin the invasion once we reach Mars orbit." Another officer looked uncertain. "Commander, do we not need to study their weapons first?" Zelthor waved his hand dismissively. "There is nothing to study. These humans are still crawling on their world, fighting over land and resources. They are not ready for the stars." His words echoed through the metallic hall. The Valorians believed that emotion made species weak. They did not understand that emotion. Love, fear, curiosity, and hope were the very things that made humanity strong. Back on Earth, in the quiet of midnight, the lights of Project Aegis burned brighter. Dr. Amira watched the alien fleet's movement on her screen. The ships were large, but their pattern was predictable. Humans had already started building countermeasures years ago, expecting something like this might one day come. "What's our plan?" one of the younger engineers asked nervously. Amira smiled softly. "Our plan is simple. We let them come, and then we make them lost." The others looked at her with surprise. "Lost?" "Yes," she said, turning toward a large holographic map of the solar system. "We will turn the space between Jupiter and Mars into a mirror. Every signal they send will bounce back. Every scan they make will show them illusions. They'll think they're flying straight, but they'll be chasing ghosts." Commander Rhodes nodded. "Operation Phantom Sky. Begin calibration." 3 days later, the Valorian fleet passed Jupiter. The gas giant's swirling storms looked peaceful from a distance. But something strange started happening to the alien ships. Small disruptions in their communication links, unexpected energy drains, navigation errors. "Commander," said one of Zelthor's officers, "our scanners are reading multiple objects ahead. Then they disappear. Probably asteroids," Zelthor replied. "Adjust course by 2 degrees, they did." But the same problem appeared again, shapes flickering in and out, signals returning from different directions. It was as if space itself was playing tricks on them. Zelthor frowned. "What is this interference?" No one answered. Hours passed. Then one of their long-range ships suddenly vanished from the radar. No explosion, no distress call. "Just gone." Zelthor stood, his voice sharp. "Find it." "We can't," the officer replied. "There is no trace. No debris, no signal." Another ship disappeared soon after. The Valorian crew began whispering among themselves. For the first time, fear entered their minds. At the same time, deep inside a command center on Earth, Dr. Amira smiled. "They're confused. It's working." The human drones, disguised as pieces of rock and ice, had attached themselves to the alien ships, releasing signal-bending fields that created reflections of false data. The aliens thought they were seeing multiple fleets and endless obstacles, but in truth, they were flying straight into a carefully crafted maze of electromagnetic distortions. Every move the aliens made was being tracked and analyzed. The human AIs predicted their next step before they took it. Amira turned to Rhodes. "They still think we don't know. Let's keep it that way," he said, "until they reach Mars orbit. Then we show them the truth." Inside the alien flagship, panic began to grow quietly. Engineers tried recalibrating systems, but nothing worked. Their star maps made no sense. Their navigation beacons failed. Commander Zelthor slammed his hand against the control panel. "We are the Valorians! We have conquered stars. How can a primitive world cause this?" But even as he shouted, deep inside him, doubt began to rise. What if they were not as primitive as he thought? On Earth, night fell slowly across continents, but in the Aegis base, the lights never dimmed. Screens showed data streams from across the solar system. Humanity's plan was working perfectly. They had not fired a single weapon, yet they were winning a war no one else even knew was happening. Dr. Amira looked up at the image of the blue planet on the wall. Earth. Glowing softly in the dark, she whispered, "Let them come. We are ready." Commander Rhodes stood beside her, hands behind his back. "They think they are hunters," he said. "But they don't know. They've already entered our trap." Far away, beyond Jupiter, the Valorian fleet drifted through the silent void, unaware that the very space around them had become humanity's greatest weapon. The first battle of Earth's defense had begun, not with fire or destruction, but with intelligence, unity, and quiet courage. And the invaders had no idea they were already losing. The space between Jupiter and Mars had never felt so alive. Invisible waves of energy rippled quietly through the dark as human technology worked in perfect rhythm. Hidden drones, satellites, and signal mirrors filled the emptiness, creating what scientists at Project Aegis called the Web of Silence. Far from knowing the truth, the Valorian fleet drifted deeper into that web, unaware that each move they made was being watched. Commander Zelthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the endless black ahead. His patience was fading. It had been 3 days since their scanners began to fail. Their long-range systems could not locate the missing ships. Every attempt to communicate with the rest of the fleet ended in static. "How many ships are still reporting?" he demanded. The communication officer bowed slightly. 17, Commander. "The others are not responding." 17? Zelthor repeated in disbelief. "We started with 38. His crystal-like eyes gleamed with frustration. "Find them, now." The officer hesitated. "We've tried every frequency, every code. It's like they vanished into space." On Earth, in the underground Aegis base, Dr. Amira Solon smiled softly at her monitor. "They've lost more than half of their fleet's communication link," she said. "Our illusions are perfect." Commander Ethan Rhodes leaned over her shoulder, watching the flickering dots representing the alien ships. "Let's keep the pressure steady," he said. "No direct interference yet, just confusion." He turned to the team of young engineers. "Remember, and the goal is not destruction. It's understanding. We want them to realize what we're capable of before they even reach Mars." One of the engineers, a young woman from Japan named Hana, asked quietly, "Do you think they'll surrender before they see Earth?" Rhodes thought for a moment before replying. "No, but they'll begin to fear what they don't understand. And that fear will do half our work for us." The Valorian ships, once moving in clean formation, now drifted unevenly. Some turned sharply without reason. Others tried to re-establish radio contact by sending energy pulses. But every signal they sent bounced back at them like an echo in a cave. Inside the crown of Dominion, the crew grew restless. They whispered about ghosts in space, about human trickery. Their empire had never faced resistance like this. One officer finally gathered the courage to speak. "Commander, perhaps the humans have technology we do not yet understand." Zelthor's sharp gaze turned toward him. "Technology? These creatures barely left their planet's atmosphere. They cannot even travel beyond their moon without assistance. How can they do this?" Another voice spoke quietly from the back, an old scientist named Varel, who had studied cosmic signals for decades. "Commander, sometimes intelligence does not need power. Sometimes small worlds survive because they learn to adapt faster." Zelthor looked at him coldly. "You speak like you admire them." "I admire survival," Varel said softly. "And these humans, they may be small, but they have prepared for us." Zelthor didn't respond. Deep down, a small part of him began to wonder if the scientist was right. Back on Earth, the Aegis Command Center buzzed with activity. New data came in every hour. The alien fleet's energy levels were dropping faster than expected. "They're running low on power," Amira reported. "The disruption field is making their engines inefficient." Rhodes nodded. "Good. Let's give them one clear path and straight toward Mars. We'll guide them right where we want them." She turned to him, surprised. "You're opening a path?" "Yes," Rhodes said. "Let them believe they've found a way out. Hope is a useful tool." For the next 24 hours, the Valorians followed what they thought was a safe corridor toward Mars. The false signals created by human drones made it look clear of danger. Their scanners finally started showing a stable route. "Commander," the navigation officer said with relief, "we've found an exit from the interference, a clear path toward Mars orbit." Zelthor allowed himself a thin smile. "Finally. Once we reach Mars, we'll rebuild our strength and prepare for the invasion. Then they will know the might of the Valorian Empire." He didn't notice that each of his ship's movements, every course correction, every burst of energy, was being tracked in real time by hundreds of human eyes. In the Aegis base, Amira watched the alien fleet move exactly where she had planned. Her hands danced across the control panel as she whispered commands to the AI systems. "Adjust the pulse timing by 1.2 seconds, she said. "Let them pass the first phase of the trap." "Don't stop them yet," Rhodes glanced at her. "You look nervous." Amira smiled faintly. "Not nervous. Just amazed. We've studied the stars for centuries, but now the stars are watching us back. And we're winning." The commander looked at her with quiet respect. Humanity always learns fastest when it has no other choice. Far away, the Valorians entered Mars orbit. They expected to see a lifeless red planet, but instead they were greeted by a web of light circling it. Thousands of small dots blinked across the horizon. "What are those?" Zelthor asked sharply. "Unidentified objects, Commander. Possibly satellites or defense platforms," the officer replied. "Destroy them." The weapon systems charged, or tried to, but the power failed halfway through. Sparks flashed across the control panels. "System failure," shouted an engineer. "Our energy cores are unstable." At that moment, every Valorian ship received a single transmission, not from their own command but from Earth. A calm human voice spoke in perfect Valorian language. "You came to conquer. We came to learn. Turn back or you will lose more than your fleet. You will lose your pride." The bridge fell silent. Every officer looked at their commander. The voice had been soft but filled with confidence. "Who sent that?" Zelthor demanded. We don't know," said the officer. "It came from the third planet." "From Earth?" Zelthor clenched his fists. "They're taunting us." But the scientist Varel's expression changed. He looked almost thoughtful. "No, Commander. That was not a threat. That was a warning." On Earth, the Aegis team watched as the alien fleet froze in orbit. They received the message, Amira said quietly. Hana leaned closer to the screen. "What if they attack anyway?" Rhodes answered calmly. "Then we move to Phase 2. "Phase 2? Hana asked. Rhodes nodded. The Mirror Pulse. The Mirror Pulse was one of humanity's most secret creations. A coordinated burst of electromagnetic energy designed to reflect any foreign signal, turning it back toward its source. It didn't destroy. It simply forced the enemy to see themselves. Amira began the countdown. 3, 2, 1, activate. In that instant, the Valorian ship's sensors exploded with light. They saw what they thought were thousands of human ships surrounding them, but in truth they were seeing reflections of their own fleet. "Commander." "We're surrounded!" cried an officer. "Impossible!" Zelthor shouted. "Engage evasive maneuvers!" The fleet scattered, colliding with their own illusions, sending signals in every direction. Confusion spread faster than any weapon. Their systems overloaded, their communication failed completely. Varel looked at the chaos and whispered, "They are showing us what we have become, lost in our own reflection." Back on Earth, the Aegis base erupted in cautious celebration. "They're turning on each other," Hana said with disbelief. Amira nodded slowly. "They're not fighting us. They're fighting shadows." Rhodes watched silently, his voice calm but filled with pride. "That's how humans win wars, and not by force, but by turning the enemy's strength into weakness." He looked at the holographic image of Earth, shining blue and bright. "This planet may be small, but it belongs to the most unpredictable species in the galaxy." In orbit around Mars, the once mighty Valorian fleet was falling apart. Ships drifted aimlessly, their systems overloaded. Command channels were gone. For the first time in Valorian history, a commander of the Empire had no control over his own forces. Zelthor stood in silence as the holographic stars around him flickered. He finally spoke, his voice low. "Perhaps we underestimated them." Varel turned to him gently. "Every conqueror does, Commander. Outside, the red light of Mars reflected off the broken fleet, ships that had come to rule but had instead been trapped by intelligence they never expected. On Earth, Amira looked up from her console. "They're losing power. In a few hours their ships will be immobile." Rhodes nodded. "Then it's over," she smiled softly. "No battles, no deaths, just knowledge." He returned her smile. "And maybe that's humanity's greatest weapon." Far beyond, in the quiet orbit of Mars, the alien ships floated like fallen stars, defeated not by war, but by the brilliance and unity of humankind. The war they never saw was already won. The red dust of Mars floated silently below the Valorian fleet. Their ships, once bright and proud, now hung like broken lanterns in the emptiness. Energy cores flickered, engines slept, and communication signals turned into endless static. For the first time in Valorian history, a great invasion had been stopped, and not by war, but by confusion. Commander Zelthor stood on the bridge of his flagship Crown of Dominion. The silence around him was heavier than the gravity of a planet. His officers worked nervously, trying to restart the engines. The shining lights of their control panels had turned dim. "Status?" he asked quietly. "Power at 20%, replied the engineer. "Our systems are still being disrupted. We cannot find the source." Zelthor clenched his hands. "How can this be?" "No shots were fired. No ships attacked us. Yet we are powerless." The old scientist Varel, standing beside him, looked out the large window toward the distant blue glow of Earth. "Perhaps that is their power, Commander. The strength to fight without fighting." Zelthor turned sharply toward him. "You think they did this?" "These humans." Varel nodded. "I am certain of it. We entered their system with arrogance. We never imagined they could watch, learn, and prepare." Zelthor frowned deeply. "Then we will learn from them. We will adapt." But before he could give another command, a new signal appeared on their screens. It wasn't Valorian, it came from Earth. The voice that spoke was calm and clear, speaking in perfect Valorian language. To the fleet approaching from beyond Mars, you are not welcome, but you are not our enemy. Turn back now. Your journey ends here. The entire bridge froze. The crew exchanged fearful glances. They had never heard a human voice before, and now it was echoing inside their ship. We know why you came, the voice continued. You seek conquest. We seek knowledge. You believe strength is in numbers. We believe it is in understanding. The voice stopped. For a moment, only the hum of broken machines filled the room. Then the signal changed again. A new image appeared on the main screen. Not of weapons or armies, but of Earth itself, turning slowly in the light of the sun. The blue oceans, the white clouds, and the green continents shone with beauty. The message continued. This is our home. We protect it not because it is perfect, but because it teaches us to rise each time we fall. You see weakness in us. But what you call weakness, we call life. The Valorians stared in silence. They had expected threats or demands, but instead they received words filled with peace and quiet power. Commander, said the communication officer softly. The message repeats across all frequencies. We cannot block it. Zelthor's sharp voice broke the silence. Find the source. Track it. We can't, the officer said helplessly. It comes from every direction, even from the void itself. Zelthor slammed his hand on the console. Enough, I will not be defeated by a message. But Varel stepped forward calmly. Perhaps you should listen, Commander. There is something in those words, something we have forgotten. Zelthor looked at him with irritation. You speak as if they are wiser than us. Varel's voice was steady. Maybe they are. They have survived on a planet full of storms, volcanoes, and endless wars. Yet they keep creating, building, learning. They do not conquer, they endure, and endurance is the first form of power. Meanwhile, far away on Earth, the Aegis Command Center was filled with quiet excitement. The message had been transmitted successfully. Dr. Amira Solon stood in front of a large holographic screen showing the Valorian ships orbiting Mars. They received it, she said softly. Now we wait. Commander Ethan Rhodes crossed his arms. If they respond with aggression, we have the pulse shield ready. But I don't think they will, Amira nodded. They've never faced something like this before. No enemy has ever spoken to them with peace. She looked around at her team, scientists, engineers, and soldiers from dozens of nations. Their faces showed both pride and nervousness. This message, she said quietly, is not just for them. It's for the whole universe, to show what humanity truly is. Up in space, the Valorians began arguing. Some wanted to retreat. Others believed it was a trick. Commander, one officer said firmly, we should continue our mission. Their words are meaningless. Once we repair the systems, we can still reach Earth. But Varel disagreed. If we reach Earth, what will we gain? A planet of life that will never submit? A people who can turn space itself into a weapon? They have already won this war. Zelthor looked torn. His pride battled against his reason. You speak like a coward, he said at last. Varel smiled gently. No, Commander. I speak like someone who has seen the truth. The humans do not destroy their enemies, or they change them. Hours passed. The Valorian engineers worked endlessly, but every attempt to restart their systems failed. It was as if invisible hands controlled the air around them. The energy fields near Mars twisted any signal they tried to send. Then, suddenly, another message appeared, this time in visuals. It showed humans, men, women, and children of all races, standing on the surface of Earth. Some were smiling, some were waving, some were simply looking into the sky. There were no soldiers, no weapons, only people. A soft human voice said, We do not seek war, but we will not be ruled. If you come to share knowledge, we welcome you. If you come to conquer, you will find nothing to rule here but your own fear. The transmission ended with the image of a child drawing a circle in the sand, representing Earth. It was simple, yet it carried more power than any weapon. Zelthor watched the screen quietly. His officers waited for his command. Finally, he spoke in a low, thoughtful voice. They know our language, our location, our weakness, and yet they offer peace, Varel nodded. Because peace is not their weakness, Commander. It is their victory. For the first time, Zelthor lowered his head. What are we then? Conquerors of emptiness? Rulers of silence? Varel looked out toward the stars. We are students now. On Earth, cheers echoed across the command center. The alien ships had stopped moving completely. No energy spikes, no weapon charges, only silence. Hana turned to Amira. Do you think they'll leave? Amira nodded slowly. Yes, not out of fear, but out of respect. Commander Rhodes smiled faintly. They came to conquer, but they found teachers instead. Hours later, a final message came from the Valorian fleet. It was short and calm. To the people of Earth, your strength is not in your machines, but in your spirit. We entered your system with pride and leave it with wisdom. The stars will speak of you. When the message ended, the alien ships began to move, not toward Earth, but away from it. Their engines reignited slowly as they turned toward the edge of the solar system. Project Aegis watched them go in silence. There was no celebration, no shouting, only quiet awe. Amira finally spoke. We didn't destroy them. We changed them. Maybe that's how humanity will win the universe. Not by fear, but by example. Rhodes nodded. And maybe one day when they return, it won't be as conquerors, but as friends. High above the blue planet, the satellites of Project Aegis shimmered in sunlight. They were no longer symbols of war, but guardians of peace. Humanity had done something no other civilization had ever done, defeated an enemy before the first shot was fired. The stars had seen many conquerors, but now they had seen something new, the protectors of Earth, the people who learned to fight with wisdom instead of weapons. And across the galaxy, the story began to spread, of a small planet with fragile beings who stood against a mighty empire and won with intelligence, courage, and unity. The universe would remember that voice forever. You came to conquer. We came to learn. The silence around Mars was heavier now than any sound could break. The Valorian fleet, once bright and proud, drifted without formation. Engines slept. Weapons remained cold. Communication was broken. They had come with plans of conquest and with pride and purpose, but instead they now faced something they had never expected: confusion, mercy, and a voice of peace. Commander Zelthor stood on the bridge of the flagship Crown of Dominion. The vast red surface of Mars glimmered below him. In the quiet, his officers moved slowly, repairing systems they feared would never work again. Commander, said an officer, voice low, our fleet is broken. The majority of ships have lost engines. Some report total power failure. Zelthor said nothing. His mind was heavy with the messages Earth had sent. They had not fought him. They had not attacked him. They had simply shown him a different way, a way he did not understand. Burrell stepped beside him. They didn't need to destroy us, Commander. They simply removed our will to continue. Zelthor turned toward him. And what do they want in return? Burrell gave no answer. His eyes were fixed on Earth in the distance. On Earth, the Aegis Command Center was alive with movement. Screens showed every detail of the alien fleet's drift around Mars. The mission had reached an unusual stage. Humanity had not attacked. They had only disrupted. And now the invaders were still. Dr. Amira Solon stood at her console watching the readouts. They're powerless, she said softly. But they're still intact. No destruction, no deaths. That's what makes this different. Commander Ethan Rhodes walked beside her. They believed conquest meant battle. We showed them that battle can happen without violence. Hana, one of the youngest engineers, spoke quietly. Do you think they will surrender? Rhodes shook his head. Not surrender. They will rethink themselves. And that is far more important. Amira nodded. We've given them a choice. Now they must decide. In the silence above Mars, the Valorian commanders called a meeting. In a large room aboard the flagship, a group of leaders gathered, their shapes outlined by the glowing control panels. This was not expected, said one officer. We have never lost a battle before arrival. Neither have we faced such an opponent, another replied. They did not destroy us. They simply broke our purpose. Zelthor looked down at the holographic map of Mars and Earth. For the first time, doubt entered his voice. We came with pride. We came to conquer, and now we are powerless before them. Why? Burrell answered softly. Because they fight not for conquest, but for survival. They are not a species of weapons. They are a species of thought. The room was silent. Outside, through the viewports, human drones moved around the Valorian fleet, not attacking but watching, recording, and maintaining the disruption field. Then, the unexpected happened. A human ship approached the Valorian fleet, not in attack but in gesture. The ship was small compared to the alien vessels. It moved slowly, carefully, its lights calm and unthreatening. On board, a team of humans prepared for something they had never trained for. First contact. On the bridge of the human ship, Commander Rhodes spoke quietly into the communicator. "Remember, this is not a battle. This is a meeting. Approach with respect." Dr. Amira nodded beside him. "They've never seen us like this before. Let's not give them fear." The human ship moved steadily forward, shining a gentle blue light. For the Valorians watching, it was unexpected. The conquerors had never seen a vessel approach them without weapons. Inside the Valorian flagship, alarms flashed. "Commander, a human ship is approaching." "It's unarmed," an officer shouted. Zelthor rose from his seat. "Bring it forward," he ordered. "Let them speak." The human ship approached slowly, stopping at a safe distance from the largest alien vessel. A small window opened in the hull, and a calm human voice filled the silence. "Commander Zelthor of the Valorian Empire, we do not come to fight. We come to speak." Zelthor looked toward the bridge crew. No one spoke. Then he stepped forward. "Speak, human. But know this, and we came for conquest. We do not speak to beggars." The human commander replied, "We do not speak to beg. We speak to understand." The human ship projected an image, not of soldiers or weapons, but of Earth itself. Oceans, mountains, forests, cities filled the hologram. Children played, people worked, scientists studied the skies. A voice continued. "This is Earth, this is who we are. We have learned to protect without destroying, to live without conquering. You came for war, but we offer knowledge." The Valorian bridge was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Zelthor's voice broke the stillness. "Why do you not attack? Why do you show mercy?" The human commander answered simply, "Because we do not believe victory comes through destruction. It comes through respect." That word, respect, echoed in Zelthor's mind. The Valorian Empire had never heard it spoken as a reason for strength. Hours passed as the two sides exchanged words. The human ship remained still in orbit, projecting images and messages of peace. Scientists from Earth shared information about biology, technology, and the history of human survival. The Valorian leaders listened, not as enemies, but as students of something new. In that silence, a decision was made. Commander Zelthor turned to his officers. "We came to conquer, but we cannot conquer what we do not understand. We will retreat," one officer protested. "Commander, our orders." "We follow no orders now," Zelthor said. "Our mission is ended. We will leave this system, but we will carry their words into the stars." Farrell stepped forward, his voice calm. "And perhaps, Commander, that is how wars end, without the spilling of blood." Back on Earth, Project Aegis watched the scene unfold. The human ship's peaceful approach had worked. The Valorian fleet, once powerful, now prepared to leave Mars' orbit. Dr. Amira turned to Rhodes. "They're retreating." Rhodes nodded slowly. "They were not defeated by our weapons. They were defeated by our will, our choice not to destroy." Hana smiled quietly. "We didn't just protect Earth. We changed the way they think." Amira looked at the stars beyond Mars. "This will be remembered forever." In the cold stillness above Mars, the Valorian fleet began to withdraw. Their ships turned slowly, engines flickering to life again. They left behind no debris, no fires, no scars. Only a lesson, one written in silence and peace. Zelthor stood on the bridge of his flagship. He looked toward Earth one last time. They did not fight as we expected. They fought with their minds, with their hearts. Varel placed a hand on his shoulder. "Perhaps that is the future of war. Not through destruction, but understanding." Zelthor nodded quietly. "Then we are students now." On Earth, the Aegis Command Center stood still. The battle was over. Humanity had not fired a shot, yet the war was won. The team exchanged smiles, nods, and quiet thanks. Commander Rhodes finally spoke to the group. "They came to conquer. We gave them a different story, and that story changed everything." Dr. Amira turned toward the screen showing the retreating Valorian ships. "This is not the end. It is only the beginning. They will speak of us in their worlds," Rhodes nodded, "and perhaps one day they will return, not as conquerors but as friends." Above Mars, the red planet turned silently. The Valorian fleet disappeared into the darkness of space. Earth remained, safe, silent, and forever changed. The war that never began was now a legend of wisdom over war. a legend of humanity's greatest weapon, mercy. The Valorian fleet drifted away from Mars slowly, leaving behind no trace of battle, no smoke, no debris, no scars. Only silence filled the space between the planets. Commander Zelthor stood on the bridge of the Crown of Dominion, staring at the blue glow of Earth. His fleet was broken, not by weapons, but by words. Not by fire, but by a choice. "Commander," said Varel quietly, "this will be remembered." Zelthor did not speak at first. The words from Earth, in the voice, the images, the peace, echoed endlessly in his mind. He had thought conquest was strength. He now wondered if strength was something far different. "Perhaps," he said at last, "they have taught us the greatest lesson any conqueror can learn, that victory does not always mean war." On Earth, Project Aegis was filled with quiet relief. The great invasion had ended without battle. Humanity had not fired a shot, yet it had protected itself against one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Dr. Amira Solon stood before the main holographic display. The retreating Valorian fleet appeared on her screen as small dots fading into space. She turned toward Commander Rhodes. "It is over. We won without violence," Rhodes nodded. "They came to conquer. But we gave them something they had never faced before. Mercy and understanding. That will change them forever." Hana, still at her console, spoke quietly. "Do you think they'll ever return?" Rhodes smiled faintly. "Perhaps. But when they do, it will be as allies, not enemies." Amira looked at the image of Earth shining in the blackness of space. "We showed them what makes us human. Not our strength, not our weapons, but our choice to protect, not destroy." For days after the retreat, the world watched silently. No nations claimed victory. No armies celebrated. Instead, humanity united in quiet awe. They had faced a power far greater than themselves, and survived not by fighting, but by thinking, by speaking, by being united. Project Aegis became a symbol. Across every city and nation, the story spread. It was not a story of destruction, but of courage. It was not a story of war, but of peace. Children learned of it in schools. Scientists studied it. Leaders spoke of it. It became known as the Day of the Voice, the day humanity defended itself without lifting a weapon. Far away in the drifting Valorian fleet, Zelthor and his officers gathered once more. They were no longer conquerors at ease. They were thinkers. "This was not defeat," Zelthor said quietly. "It was transformation." Varel nodded. "They gave us something we cannot unlearn. A message of peace. A challenge to our pride." Another officer spoke. "Do you think they will forgive us if we return?" Zelthor looked out into the stars. "Forgiveness is not ours to give. But perhaps one day they will invite us to return, not as enemies, but as equals." Varel placed a hand on his shoulder. "That is the greatest victory of all." And so, the Valorian fleet moved beyond the edge of the solar system, carrying with them not conquest, but a question. What is the purpose of power, if not to protect life? Back on Earth, the aftermath was not silence, but a new beginning. Project Aegis became a permanent symbol of unity. Nations agreed to share their resources, their science, and their technology for the future. Space exploration became a united effort. Commander Rhodes spoke at the new United Earth Space Council. "We have learned something that no battle can teach, that strength comes from unity, that survival comes from respect, that war can be avoided if we dare to speak first." Dr. Amira stood beside him. "Our victory was not in weapons, but in ideas, and ideas last far longer than empires." The world listened, and across the globe hope grew. Years passed. Humanity continued to explore the stars. The story of the Valorian fleet became a legend, a story told not as war, but as a lesson. For the Valorians, the journey became one of reflection. They studied human history, science, and culture. They carried the voice of Earth with them into the galaxy. Commander Zelthor recorded his final log before retiring his command. "We came seeking conquest. We leave carrying a lesson. Humanity has shown us that true power is not in destruction, but in understanding. They have taught us that peace can be stronger than war. That is the legacy of Earth." That message was shared among the Valorian worlds, and slowly the galaxy began to listen. On Earth, humanity moved forward. The day of the Great Invasion became a turning point. Nations signed new agreements for peace. Scientists launched new missions for discovery, not war. Children grew up learning that the stars were not a place to conquer, but a place to understand. The United Earth Space Council built the Voice of Earth, a great communication beacon designed to send messages of peace and knowledge into deep space. When it was activated, it sent a message across the galaxy. We come not to conquer. We come to learn, to protect, to explore, to understand. This is who we are. It was not a warning. It was an invitation. Far beyond in the deep darkness between stars, the Valorian fleets passed the beacon. They paused. For the first time in their history, they did not speak of war. They spoke of peace. Commander Zelthor stood before his officers, his voice steady. We will return one day, not as conquerors, but as students of Earth, Varel smiled. And perhaps that is how we all survive, not by fighting, but by listening. And so the story of Earth spread across the galaxy, not as a battle won with weapons, not as a war fought and lost, but as a lesson of unity, courage, and mercy. Humanity had faced the greatest threat it had ever known, and had won without bloodshed. The stars had learned a new truth, that the greatest power is not to destroy, but to change hearts. And in that moment, Earth became more than a world. It became a symbol, a light in the dark, a voice that echoed across the galaxy. They came to conquer, but they left changed, and humanity learned something greater still, that war can be won without war, and peace can be built without surrender. The universe would never forget the day humanity stood as one, the day Earth spoke,